So last week I was mentioning how I hope we get introduced to a memorable supporting cast, and I expected within a few episodes to get someone who would be an ongoing side character of some sort. I just wasn't expecting a childhood friend of our main female Aharen there, and how stalkerish she would be, but not going full-blown crazy to the point that she's gonna try to kill anyone or anything, just more so she seems a lot more dangerous than she actually is, and the fact that they can go from showing her as a WWE wrestler ready to throw down to ending with a pretty sweet moment with her and Aharen just kind of like bonding, and how she views her as walking home together with her and Rido, even though she's doing some Spider-Man shit going against buildings, or as we see when she realizes that she's been clued in the entire time, she starts standing on rooftops with binoculars. This show is pretty goddamn wholesome, hilarious, while having just enough dramatic spice to keep it unexpected and keep the viewers on their toes. This is now like the second time in 2 episodes that they've used the bathroom in a funny way. Last week they had the note passing scene and how he got a note thrown at him when he was going to the bathroom. This week, same thing, him going to the bathroom and this stalker is still there. Somehow they're able to do those jokes and have it not come off as like super perverted or anything, but just like so innocent of what's happening on screen. And there was just so much to love about the two's dynamic this week, because the idea of these two being very close friends and, you know, one of the characters having no personal space and boundaries, the idea of distance and perspective just doesn't come natural for her, so lunchbox to the face or basically, you know, headbutting to say good morning. And the fact that they kicked the episode off with basically an unexpected explanation of just saying like, hey, this happened, we're not going to go into it as of yet. She comes in looking bruised. I was ready to throw down, being like, who hurt my girl here? What's going on? And just the fact that, you know, to introduce a stalker in that way, because at first I was like, oh shit, does she have a bully sort of a thing? Because the way they were directing it was like she was ready to throw down or something. Maybe she was upset that her boy Rido could be a bodyguard to her or something. And then just to see that, you know, she used to be the person sitting next to her, and now she feels envious of Rido being the person sitting next to her. And just the idea that she views him as like this monster, this thug, this bully. And, you know, the idea of like how much it destroys his self-esteem, and then she has to comfort him, and then she has to comfort her. It's just this like, she ended up being the mom in this episode, despite at times being some of the most immature. But the idea of a situation that's so embarrassing, the idea of your fly being open, which honestly for guys it happens to us at least once in our lifetime. I've seen some people somehow manage to do it multiple times, but it happens to us all at least once. And the idea that, you know, he can't hear her because she's sick, so she's wearing a mask, and the idea that she has to go to such lengths to protect his innocence. Somehow she did it the entire day. It was only until he got home and his sister embarrassed him that he was actually that destroyed. But the idea of the apple, like I used in the thumbnail, the idea of basically taking up all the work, so she'd go up to the chalkboard, she'd draw diagrams trying to be like, God damn, zip up your zipper. And just to see the escalation and how far she went into protecting his innocence. And when he saw the reflection, the fact that he's like, oh, I don't notice the zipper, I notice a haircut that doesn't exist. This man is like the definition, the prime example that women make fun of guys who aren't able to notice things. And I'm like, my boy, you need to recognize these things. It's not even like it was partially zipped down. You had your strawberry boxers in full force here and you didn't notice it. It wasn't even like it blended into the blue jeans or anything, right? It's just, I love this show, man. It still sticks to that formula that I was talking about in my first impressions, that it does like a borderline serious without fully committing to it. So we're not in the situation like Comey Can't Communicate where certain characters need to be thrown in jail. The stalker, as you could call it, or as it's being presented in this episode, it wasn't anything that was actually dangerous. She may appear to be frightening, but she was just a girl who wanted to protect her friend and misunderstood and keeps her distance. But there's nothing harmful about her behavior, unlike similar shows with a kind of similar setting with very extreme personalities. And I kind of like that because I can't remember the last time I watched a show that actually goes as extreme as this does, but never commits so far that it appears so anime that you couldn't see this happening in the real world. The most anime thing about this is the characters not basically pushing back against Aharen from guarding his crotch, basically. But it's anime, so you kind of suspend that sense of disbelief because it's not the most ludicrous or Looney Tunes thing ever. And that's what I love about this, is that the comedy is surprisingly intelligent while simultaneously just building up a great connection between the two. And now that we have a main sidecast supporting character who clearly is going to be relevant, not sure if she'll appear every episode or if it will just be kind of like an ongoing gag and then eventually they'll reach a point where she actually looks at Rido, not as a monster, but maybe as a genuine friend or something like that. Either way, they got a lot to work with. I said it with last week's First Impressions. I could easily see myself watching a couple cores worth of this show with just the main duo, because look at the stuff that they did together in this episode, last week's episode. Even though it's a school setting, arguably one of the most boring settings you could set your location in, there's so much potential with these two's personalities to make that setting very entertaining. Spice it up with a decent-sized supporting cast, maybe 3 or 4 characters who are kind of occurring, they pop up every so often. It's hard not to see this show succeeding with everything it attempts to do, while simultaneously having 2 of the sweetest characters who just don't have personal space because of this lack of communication, right? Because of the soft-spoken voice, not understanding distance and perspectives and personal space and boundaries. It's crazy because in terms of the order of which I recorded these, I watched Kaguya-sama first and then I watched this. And usually I might find myself feeling like 2 of the same type of shows, right? Even though they definitely have a different idea of what they're going for. But the idea of like that school rom-com comedy genre, sometimes I need to space it out. Maybe, one a day I could easily watch, but sometimes back to back, it's a little much. But I love how this show, similar to Kaguya-sama, despite it not being as maybe overboard with the comedy, it just feels like something that I can't find myself comparing to. Because often with these types of shows, I mean, at the very least, I can say, oh, X character personality reminds me of this. And despite some of the fundamentals, like, the main character sitting in the back of the classroom, the school uniforms, the fact that these characters just feel like Rido, Aharen, I guess, honestly, I can't even say the childhood friend reminds me. I was gonna say Komi, but she's a lot more wholesome than what the characters in terms of stalkerish personalities in Komi have. So really, this show, it could be an example that I could see different mangakas maybe taking influence from, which honestly I would love because there's so many school shows that I skip out on every season because they just are boring as shit to me. I would love to see more shows take influence from this because I love the presentation. It's simple, but look at the eye drop scene when she was going like full monstrous temper tantrum without going overboard, or Rido's reaction to certain things. It's hard not to love the simple yet effective and detailed aesthetic that this show has going for it. I don't know if the manga has talked about this yet. I know sometimes with certain shows, you see them a lot on Twitter expressing their gratitude for the anime. I'd be shocked if they didn't like this one because it seems like a quality production so far, and of course, I'm excited for episode 3. Thoughts if you have any favorite moment. My favorite moment has to be the reveal of the childhood friend and how brutal she's appeared to be and turned out to be kind of wholesome, health things considered, but let me know yours down below. Leave a like if you enjoy and subscribe if you're new around here. Till next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.